Hello, I'm Nicole, and today's topic, are you shopping to avoid anxiety? And so I'm like, oh, shopping to avoid anxiety, that's an interesting one. I'm going to start and tell you with a little story I had around this last week. So I was in orchestra rehearsal and I play the violin, and we meet, and I was just feeling like I just didn't want to be in my chair. I was like feeling a little jittery and anxious, and I kept looking at the clock. I'm like, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Are we done yet? And so I was feeling that first, like that jitteriness in my body, and I was kind of noticing it, and then I just sort of ignored it, and I was like, okay, whatever. And then at some point, my mind turned to shopping. And so it's turned into fall for sure in Seattle, and it's rainy and it's chilly. And I started to think maybe I just need a new sweater. Or maybe I need a new top. Like, I think I should get a new top because it's just that time of year and it's really, I think I'd rather do that. Like, I just really, maybe I should just get on a website and start to look. And if you've ever played in an orchestra or wondered what our protocol is, you do not pick up your phone in the middle of rehearsal and start online shopping. That's what I wanted to do. Like, when we had pauses and our conductor was working with different sections, I literally was like about to pick up my phone and start to click on some buttons in some browsers to see if I could get a cute new outfit. So what was going on there? It's because I have looked at this many times for myself before. I know for myself that shopping is a tendency I have and an out that I like to take when I don't want to deal with my feelings and my emotions. It's really common for me to shop when I'm feeling like I just need like that little rush or that little dopamine hit of like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. So I'm going to get on a website and start looking for something instead. And so why am I bringing this up? Because it's really interesting. So shopping is my out, but you also have these kinds of outs. All of us do. All of us have these patterns that we have around and old habits that we have to try to help ourselves or think that we're going to help ourselves when we're dealing with something that feels uncomfortable. It might be food. A lot of us, food is a big way to deal with it. Like sugar can be a way, like I'm feeling a little stressed or anxious, so I'm going to eat a bunch of sugar to try to help myself feel better. Drinking whiskey at night, a little glass of wine, that starts to come up to 2, and it becomes a regular thing that every night you have to have a glass of wine. And I'm not dissing any of these things, by the way. Like, I think it's totally great and awesome if you have some purpose and intention for going to get an outfit that you need for a certain event. Wonderful. But like, if you're just shopping as an exit strategy, this is what I'm talking about. And the same thing with wine. Like, go have a glass of wine with some friends, but if you're doing it on the regular, maybe even hiding it, not talking to people about it, those are the things we want to start to look at. Some people, I know people like video games can be an out. There's lots, social media can be an out too. Like, we're feeling kind of stressed and we just start to scroll. And even though the scroll can start to make us feel worse. So these are all things for us to start to look at. And what is it? How do you know? Right? How do you know that you're doing something to try to avoid dealing with anxiety or stress or how you're feeling? Typically, it's because you'll know what your habit is. Like, it's the one you're kind of like, I do keep doing that. That's actually not really serving me. Like, it's not something that's really productive or helpful for you, but you can't quite stop yourself. Like, you just keep doing it over and over again. I will say for myself, a lot of the identification of these things came for me from doing like a nutritional cleanse where I couldn't eat sugar or carbs, which is one of my go-tos. Like, if I want to eat something really bready and cheesy, which doesn't really do well for my digestion, like, I generally know that something is up. I've gone on like no shopping months, like that has helped me start to identify. So those are just a couple of tools and suggestions for you to start to be like, okay, how do I start to notice and see how much I'm relying on something like that to avoid dealing with what's really going on and what's really happening, which is typically just like some deep level of anxiety. And it's like, what is at the root of that? What is at the root of that? And so I just wanted to give you all, so first is the identification, right? That's what we're talking about, is the identification of what it is that's becoming out for you. And then the second piece of it is then, okay, like, what do you do about it? what do you do about it? And so typically, like, the anxiety can be coming, it comes in, actually, I have to say, when you are in really pursuit of big goals and big dreams, although it can come in on a daily basis, like the daily stressors of life. But I find, like, if you're pursuing like a big goal, like writing a book, and you're feeling a lot of anxiety and stress about it, you might go online shop instead of writing down your chapter. Speaking from personal experience, right? So like that might be one of your outs. Your out might be you're like, it's the evening time and like something really big is happening in your life and you're feeling really stressed and you always reach for that glass of wine. So what we're looking at is like, how is anxiety starting to show up in general in your life? And how do you then start to identify it so then you can start to sit with and feel what it is that's going on so that you can actually move through it, right? Because we have these habits, we have these patterns. Step one is always to identify. And then step two is always to then, how do you start to identify what's underneath it? What's underneath it? And so one of my favorite things that I really love is actually identifying what emotion I'm feeling. What's my feeling? And the list of feelings is actually quite short. There's lots of different lists on the internet. I've looked it up before on like, what are emotions? And some people say there's only 5, and then some people say there's 10. And so there's lots of a different range, but I just like to think of it generally as like, emotions can be happiness. It can be sadness. Emotions can be joy. It can be fear. Peace is an emotion. Gratitude is not an emotion, but it can bring in feelings of contentment, which is an emotion. Pain, grief, like those things are all part of the range of what emotions are. And so for myself, if I'm feeling that desire and that urge to escape my emotions, to escape how I'm feeling, because I want to shop, right? The shopping is sort of like the trigger for me to notice. Then it's like, okay, Nicole, what can you do instead? And can you actually just identify what the emotion is? Right? And then by identifying what the emotion is, then I can actually let myself feel the emotion. And then by feeling it, then I can actually then allow it to start to pass through versus squishing it down, right? And that's often what is usually happening for me is like, if I want to shop or if I want to drink wine every single night or whatever it is, I'm trying to like squash some feeling that's really uncomfortable. And so that uncomfortable feeling might be really a sadness. It could be pain. There's like a lot of different levels of it. And so feeling it is actually the key, right? It's like, how do you start to move through that feeling of anxiety and stress and whatever it is? And instead of going through these outlets to try to avoid, then can you bring yourself back into like, what is actually the feeling that's happening? And starting to identify through those feelings and maybe a little bit of anxiety. So if you're pursuing a big dream or a big goal, it might be like, well, I just have like a fear that I cannot do this. Like I have a fear that I cannot write that book. Okay. The reality is, to write the book, you need to write a page today, right? But you have to feel that fear and then just be like, okay, I have fear. And then now that I have the fear, can I bring myself back into a place that actually allows me to move forward? Right? So the identification and then feeling the feeling. So the identification of the habit is the first step. The second step then is the identification of the feeling that you're trying to squash and suppress. And then maybe taking a deep breath is the next step. And then just moving forward, right? So it's like we have to just keep being in this practice over and over again of noticing our habits and patterns, breaking them by identifying what that feeling is, and then breaking them again by changing the habit and pattern to move forward. So I bring in like the idea of like when we're dealing with really big goals, these patterns will come up all the time because they feel scary. They feel really intense, like you're dealing with something bigger than yourself. And you're going to have to deal with yourself on a regular basis. Like I always kind of laugh at how often I have to deal with myself. Pretty much every day, all the time, because I'm always with myself, right? So how do you start to identify, break those patterns, and then move yourself through? And one of the big ways then is really to identify those emotions, feel those feelings, let them sit in your body, and then realize then you can then pass through them. You can pass through them and then just get back on course. Right? And when you start to get really good at this, you can make this a super snappy little experience. I was over it by the end of orchestra, which was really great. Like deep breaths, and then just feeling what I feel and moving forward. So that's how you do it. That's how you do it. If you have any comments or questions, comment below, share this with your friends. I'd love to hear from you. Have an amazing day.